I'm Dutch, and let's react to the Americans. Hello, and welcome to my channel. My name is Johan, and I'm a typical Dutchman. And are you thinking about moving to Europe, or are you wondering why are all the prices in America so expensive? As a Dutchman, I will look at this and I will react to life and living in the US and compare that to life and living in the Netherlands or in Europe. And for today, I'm gonna take a look at all the ways that car dependency is wrecking us by Ray Delahanty, the city nerd. And yeah, it's what I hear a lot is that the US is a car dependent country. Without a car, you can't do anything. But he said why car dependency is wrecking us. So I want to know, what is it? Because it's already normal in the US to have and to do everything by car. So let's take a look at what we have to say about this. Go!
For certain things, but the way we
stop.
Cars can be useful for certain things, but the way we've become dependent on them and designed everything around them, well, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. It's literally killing.
Yeah, this is what I know from the United. You won't find this kind of intersection anywhere in Europe. No matter where you go, if you go in France or in Italy or in Spain, or take any major capital city in Europe, nowhere will you find such an extensive intersection like you see here. This is incredible. And how can you navigate through this mess, I would say?
Us. And I'm going to enumerate all the bad things with ironclad research coming up next. And I'm not even going to do my usual intro thing today because I'm just in a mood. Viewer suggested
He's not in the mood.
topics are always welcome, etc. And I do get tons of comments that are along the lines of, City Nerd, in your videos you always talk about how car dependency is bad, but only in a tangential way when you're doing like a list of the top 10 Major League Soccer venues. Can't you just make one standalone video that sums all of it up that I can send to my weird Trumpy uncle so he can understand why I'm obsessed with all this stuff? So
not an actual comment? No. Yeah, okay. Why in America are you still... Yeah, my opinion, it's because what I hear about it is the city is built to it. The zoning should be different. There are specific building codes that forces car dependency because there are parking lots that you need a car to get across a parking lot and all those things. So, yeah.
To my weird Trumpy uncle so he can understand why I'm obsessed with all this stuff. So today you're going to get what you asked for, and the foundation for this is going to be a brand new peer-reviewed article, and it's called Car Harm, a global review of automobility's harm to people and the environment, from the February 2024 edition of the Journal of Transport Geography. I mentioned this right
Wow, so this is from last year.
Right at the top because, number one, academic research is a tough business, and I want the people who worked on this to get their due. Number two, you can give them their due by going and reading their paper. It's actually highly readable for this kind of publication, and the graphics are shockingly good for something that appears in an academic journal. And three, it really is the best, most comprehensive, and obviously up-to-date paper I've seen on this topic. And because it is a peer-reviewed article, it includes extensive citations to back up everything. Now, I know you all, and I know that like less than 1% of you are actually going to go read this thing, and that's
Yeah, I won't. I'm interested, but if he's summing it up, then
why this video exists. People barely read anything anymore, much less academic journals, but they watch YouTube videos. So I'm going to do what I usually do and deliver this excellent information with my usual gratuitous commentary. But honestly, if you want to quote anything here, go to the actual source. So the paper breaks down all the different harms caused by automobility into basically 19 different buckets, which intuitively seemed like too many, but when I actually
19 will be will be a bit much to discuss in one video.
went through it, every one of the 19 buckets was legit. They really are all discrete and important ways that automobility negatively impacts our health and our lives. I'm going to be comprehensive and touch on all of these, but let's start with the most direct and obvious thing, which is crashes. So the World Health Organization says crashes kill 1.3 million people per year, or about 3,500 people a day. I'm just trying to imagine what the global response would be if 10 to 20 passenger planes crashed every day, killing everyone on board.
What do you say, 10 to 20 passenger planes?
If 10 to 20 passenger planes crashed every day, killing everyone on board, because that's roughly what this is. And remember, this is just accounting for fatalities. The number of people suffering permanently life-altering injuries in crashes is much higher. The paper does allow that modern safety features have resulted in a trend where the number of crash fatalities has increased at a lower rate than the actual amount of driving, except in the US, where the crash fatality rate has recently spiked upward, which the authors attribute at least partially to
Wait. Because this is the US versus what is the blue line? Because if the green line is the US, what is the blue line? Oh, I cannot read. Is this rate per 100,000 population? And okay, so something in,
rate has recently spiked upward, which the authors attribute at least partially to American drivers' appetite for heavier, taller vehicles. Also in the traffic violence category is something I don't really think about: intentional violence. This can take all kinds of forms and is part of why so many public buildings seem to be designed like fortresses and have massive bollards in front of them. But also, we don't talk about this much, and, well, self-harm trigger warning. But people use their vehicles for things like intentionally crashing at high speed into a fixed object, or worse, an oncoming vehicle, or using them as carbon monoxide delivery systems. Really an unpleasant aspect of this, but really important, I think. Let's dive into the health category, which we're considering separate from traffic violence. This includes pollution, both from the exhaust.
Well, but I want to circle back to the crashes. I don't know exactly the numbers, but I can imagine that the numbers in the US are significantly higher than they are here in Europe. And it's an assumption, I know, but the assumption is based on that in America, you get your driver's license when you're 16. After, let's say, 10 driver lessons, and then you do some kind of a test, and then you get your driver's license at 16. In Europe, not only in the Netherlands, in Europe, you have to be 17 to start with your driver's license training, to start with the theoretical part, so you learn how what the science means and who has right of way, etc. 17. And then you can only get your driver's license at the age of 18 with, well, most of the time, 30 to 40 hours of training together with an instructor, and a very difficult end exam to get your driver's license. And a lot of people won't pass the first time they get their driver's license exam. I did 3 times. 2 times before I switched to a different driving instructing school, and then in the 3rd time I got my driver's license. So we are more skillful drivers than in the United States. And yeah, handies, reading a book behind, looking at your cell phone. If you have your cell phone, not even in your hand, on your lap, or somewhere in your car that is distracting, €160 fine if they catch you with your cell phone anywhere near your driver's seat. So we are way more careful and well trained than the US. And that's why there is such a high crash, so many crashes happening in the US.
That's
my opinion.
Generated from running motors and material abrasion, so things like tires and brake pads. So you get all kinds of gases that you really don't want to be anywhere near, especially not in the kinds of quantities that you get from vehicle exhaust. And you get all the particulate matter from material abrasion, a lot of which is very small particles that are particularly dangerous since they travel through biological barriers so easily. And the paper cites an estimate that up to 90% of particulate matter in urban areas is
wow, look at this fine dust particles. These are all fine dust particles. Yeah.
Traffic related. All of this stuff is associated with increased risk of respiratory and circulatory diseases, including cancer, and all kinds of neurological conditions. And the authors point out that while the transition to electric vehicles will likely reduce exhaust-related pollution, particulate matter will almost certainly get worse since the vehicles are heavier and therefore generate more material abrasion. Okay, so that's...
Yeah, but in Europe, when your car is older than 3 years from new, you got a new car, the first 3 years you're free of checkups, but after the third year you have a yearly checkup for your car if everything is still okay and up to the norm of the environmental norm. And if it isn't, you have to fix it, otherwise your license, not your license, but your vehicle will be impounded, and you have to find a new car that is that is up to the specs that is used to get to drive a car in Europe. You're right, no matter which country in the entire Europe. So that's less environmental harm here again in Europe versus the United States.
That's a big one. Noise is another, and automobility is the #1 source of noise in urban areas. This includes propulsion noise, so the motors themselves, which is the more prevalent source at lower speeds, and rolling noise, meaning the contact between tires and pavement, which is the dominant source at higher speeds. So again, electric vehicles aren't going to be the magic bullet. Health impacts of increased noise: high blood pressure, tinnitus and hearing loss, anxiety, stress, sleep disturbance.
No comeback here about Europe. Noise pollution is everywhere the same.
And cognitive impairment. Remember, cities aren't noisy, it's cars that are noisy. Next.
Yeah. And that's why cities try, at least the major cities try, to keep cars out of the neighborhoods where the people live and keep the cars away from them, so that there is less noise pollution in the actual neighborhoods versus the bigger roads around the neighborhoods.
Light pollution and thermal pollution. I'm talking about extremely bright illumination that is required for roadways and parking lots, which interferes with your sleep quality and your overall health. And
okay, well, I was thinking about what does he mean by light pollution? A lot of light. I get what he's after, but no, not because of the cars. There are large parking lots with good lights, because if you don't, you get marked. So I get that point. For safety, to get a lot of light. But I wonder, what is he after?
And thermal, I'm talking about urban heat island effects, expanses of pavement that exacerbate heat waves and all the terrible health impacts that come with those kinds of events, especially for vulnerable populations. Here's another.
Hot. Maybe my English is not good enough, so I don't understand him, but let me know in the comments if you feel the same, of did I miss something? Correct me in the comments. I love to see your comments. I will react to all the comments. So yeah, and while you're down there, then like and subscribe to the channel too, please.
Sedentary travel. I'm not an evolutionary biologist, but I assume our species evolved over millions of years using our feet to get from place to place, and being conveyed by a motorized chariot is fairly new in the large scheme of things. Sedentary behavior increases risks of all kinds of cardiovascular diseases, while people who walk and bike regularly experience improved physical and mental health. Of particular concern, children have become increasingly sedentary in their travel. In the US, the proportion of children who walk or bike to school has decreased from about 48% in the 1970s to about 11% in 2017. Probably.
Yeah, okay. No argument for me. This is in the Netherlands. Bicycle everywhere. So we have cars and we drive cars, but our main transportation, even for the train or the buses, is walking to a bus stop or cycling to a train station to get to the train. Only when you have a lot of suitcases or something else, then you use your car to get to a train station or something. Or if you're going to somewhere where there is no train station or no bus station. It's strange to not have a bus station, but it's more inconvenient to get in and out of train station and buses. Then you take the car. But daily commute, a lot of people use their bikes or public transport.
It hasn't increased in the last 7 years.
And that's keeping us healthy. That's what he's aiming at.
Next is social isolation due to car dependency, and that kind of isolation is linked to increased risk of things like cardiovascular disease and cognitive deterioration. And this is another one where children are particularly impacted. Compared to kids who walk or bike, children who are conveyed from place to place in cars are found to be less connected to their neighborhoods, have fewer opportunities for outdoor play and exploration, and don't gain the experience they need to become competent at assessing risk and just becoming independent in general.
You see me knocking? Nah, yeah, it's true. If your kids do not socialize with other kids, they miss a lot of the basic skills that they later on need in their job, or in life in general. And yeah, criminality is a part of those. If people do not know how and they don't socialize in the right way, then they're going to socialize with the wrong way, going into gangs, etc. So it's not good. Now, try to keep. And I heard something like, if you let your kids play outside, you could be fined, because this is unsafe parenthood. How they call it? Child protection services, and then something like that. What? Just let your kid play outside and cycle a bit, and no, it's not done.
Okay, let's get into our next super fun category, environmental damage. The first bucket here is a very big one, carbon emissions. If you don't already know, transportation does account for a significant portion of global CO2 emissions, and 70% of that transportation number comes from road vehicles. And it's not just tailpipe, it includes full life cycle. So production, disposal, and really all the infrastructure that's required to even make automobility work in the first place. Next bucket bucket, pollution and resource extraction. So oil, obviously, but also mining for the different kinds of metals used in vehicle manufacturing has massive air, water, and soil quality impacts. And electric vehicles require even more mined material than internal combustion engine vehicles do. Another bucket under the environmental category, tires. Not biodegradable. You ever see those junkyards full of used ones? Yeah, those aren't going to disintegrate organically. The paper cites a study that says about 35% of microplastics that are released into the ocean are from tires and road markings. All of this stuff makes its way into the runoff, and it is all very bad.
They are rubber tires, but I believe that if nature needs to break down rubber, it takes 35 years or so.
There's another bucket for other kinds of pollution, like the road salt we use for de-icing streets in the winter. I hate to break it to you, but massive amounts of sodium chloride in our runoff is not good for freshwater ecosystems. And oil spills?
Yeah, I know that. We, in the Netherlands, and I'm not sure in other countries in Europe, but in the Netherlands we switched to sand. So not salt, but sand. And same effect, less environmental pollution.
Not at all optimal for our marine ecosystems. There's also a land use bucket, so the way we allocate land to our roadway system. Collisions with wildlife are just a piece of this. More troubling is the way our roadway network fragments habitats and impacts biodiversity, and the way that low-density development patterns associated with automobility lead to loss of habitat, not to mention exacerbating natural disasters like flooding and wildfires. Okay, everything I've talked about so far is terrible, and it's almost
yeah, it's terrible. Yeah, but a lot of those are also preventable with the right laws, let's say.
It's absurd to say that any one of these things is worse than another because they're all bad. But in a minute, I'm going to get to a special kind of badness, which is all the ways that automobility erodes the very fabric of society. And just so this whole video isn't just a huge bummer, I'm going to talk about solutions and what you, as a conscientious viewer of YouTube videos, can do in your own community. And I'm not even going to do my usual call to action here. You know where to find me, and I'd rather just get back on topic. I mentioned that this paper has above average graphical content. For example, this one connects all the different externalities of automobility to all the different kinds of harm we've been talking about. And I'm gonna finish with what they call social injustices, which I think is a fair term to use, but spelled out really means all the ways in which the benefits and harms of automobility are just not equally distributed. This manifests in all kinds of ways when it comes to traffic violence, like the fact that drivers are less likely to yield to black pedestrians than they are to white pedestrians.
What? Black pedestrians were twice as likely as white to be passed by 2 or more cars. When I first started to examine the racial bias in driver yielding behavior to pedestrians. Oh, yielding. We use a controlled field experiment to isolate race as independent variable. Black pedestrians were twice as likely as white to be passed by 2 or more cars. Black pedestrians experience 32% longer waits before a driver yielded. Racial bias yielding, oh, yeah, okay, I won't dive in that too much. It's racist and yeah.
And that cars are often designed for a typical male anatomy, to the point where when a woman is involved in a car crash, she is 47% more likely to be seriously injured than a man.
Oh, okay. Noted.
I'm not even trying to do identity politics here. I'm just pointing out facts. Another bucket is inaccessibility, and this comes in 2 varieties. One readily apparent one, which is that a built environment designed around cars has all kinds of barriers and hazards baked into it that especially impact people with mobility issues and vision and hearing impairments. But the other less obvious one is that automobility itself limits accessibility for people who can't afford or choose not to drive. I like the way the paper puts it. Automobility promises the annihilation of distance, but prioritizes some people's journeys at the expense of others. Rather than dissolving space, the car economy redistributes it.
Yeah. you need a car to get to your job, and if you don't have a job that pays enough so you can pay for your car, your gas, and your insurance, then the job has no use. So you need a job to get a car, but you need a car to get to a job. Yeah. Lots of this doesn't make sense.
Automatically favoring people who choose to drive, and you can just file that under gratuitous commentary. The next bucket is something I feel like I talk about on this channel constantly, and it's car-dependent places. Automobility itself is inseparable from a whole philosophy of land use that separates residential, retail, employment centers, schools, and public services geographically.
Yeah. That's the other part that I started the video with zoning. Some very strange, or not strange zoning, but large zoning areas. So large that they doesn't make any sense that they need to be interconnected. Yeah.
Resulting in cities and suburbs where the car is the solution to the problem that the car itself helped to create in the first place.
Yeah. Chicken or the egg, but in this case, it's the car. You need a car to get through all these places, and that's why there is, yeah.
Next, our roadway system. Streets are public and they're supposed to be for everyone, but in practice, cars consume far more street space than any other mode. The study states that one person in a car consumes roughly the space of 20 people in a transit vehicle, which honestly feels like a very conservative estimate, particularly in the US where vehicle sizes just keep increasing. And that's just for vehicles that are actually in motion. The paper actually has a completely different bucket just for parking, which is space that's completely useless to anyone not driving. It's usually provided for quote-unquote free, but the cost of the parking is really just rolled into the prices you pay in the store itself, regardless of whether you drove there or not. So
yeah, but that's by law in the States. I assume it's state law that for each shop there need to be as many possible, car spaces, car parking spaces along for a certain number. That's why you see so many parking spaces that are ridiculous, because there are only, like here, what do we have? All these cars right here would fit in this one, and that one could be another store. So, but yeah. What is this in behind there? Yeah, okay.
If you took transit or walked or biked to the store, you get the privilege of subsidizing parking for everyone who drove there. Short editorial. I recently made the mistake of walking into a Walmart without having drove there because I don't drive anywhere. Well, the greeter wouldn't let me enter the store with my backpack, which I always have with me because I'm generally biking everywhere and I need to carry my stuff. So I asked the greeter if they had any lockers where I could lock up my bag, which is something they do have at the Walmarts in Mexico. And what they told me was, no, you just have to go lock up your bag in your car. And when I said I didn't drive there, that just didn't compute at all. So the upshot was...
Oh, what? You didn't give me my car? You can't have a backpack. What? You are here without a car?
I had to leave the store.
He has to leave the store.
I can't even remember why I wanted to walk into a Walmart in the first place, and I'm definitely not going back. Next bucket, housing. We're in a housing crunch, and the space that's required to support automobility contributes directly to the scarcity of space for housing. Parking is often bundled into the price of housing, which creates a particular inequity and hardship for people who don't drive. And the paper points out that the amount of space that one off-street parking stall consumes is about the same as the average living space per person in countries like China, South Korea, and Spain. And this next one is super interesting. It's the inequitable allocation of time spent in traffic congestion or searching for parking, and the perverse fact that as more people drive, all of these problems get worse. The paper includes this factoid from Ivan Illich's book, Energy and Equity. The typical American male spends 4 out of their 16 waking hours either driving or earning the money they need to be able
4 out of their 16 waking hours driving
to afford to drive. Waking hours either driving or earning the money they need to be able to afford to drive.
Yeah.
25% of your waking life, and that was 1974. I'd hazard to guess it's worse now. And the last one, bucket 19, the financial burden of owning a car, necessitated by the sheer prevalence of car-dependent places. And I've talked about the cost of car ownership, which I think people systematically underestimate in a whole other video. Finally,
vehicle residual value. What is the value after 5 years? You buy a car 40K and after 5 years it's only 15K. Yeah.
this is no
It's the same in Europe, only we don't start with 50K, 40K. A 40K car. Yeah, it's the same.
a focus area of the paper or this video, but they do provide a list of interventions that can be undertaken to counteract all these harms. Congestion pricing or decongestion pricing, or
£8 a day if you want to park there. Yeah.
whatever you want to call it. Reduced parking, including eliminating parking mandates, more car-free spaces and things like open streets, reducing traffic speeds. To me, this is all just scratching the surface, but all this really comes down to evolving our cities in such a way that there are more neighborhoods where it's not only possible to live without a car, but it's preferable to do so because you experience such a massive improvement to your quality of life. And it's easy to be a doomer about this stuff, but I guarantee you, in your city, there are organizations working on making your community more livable and less car dependent. And people do always ask, hey YouTuber, you're really good at describing all the problems, but you never tell me what the answers are. And my number one answer is every city is different, and the best thing you can do is get plugged in with your local safe streets and or abundant housing advocacy.
Yeah, he's right, but my opinion from Europeans' point of view, looking at as a Dutchman, even as a Dutchman looking at this, is money. It's the capital. It's earning money, and with people drive less for better connection by public transport or biking or walkable cities, then it means there is less gas sold, which means the oil is not, so the oil is, my opinion, the oil dependency and making money with the sale of oil for cars is what's preventing all these new initiatives or laws or whatever is going on, because if people do not drive in their car, we will not make enough money. That's always, it's the price per gallon, the price per not per gallon, but the price per, yeah, I say gallon now, but it's not the right. Forgetting the name, but when it's there, when that's in danger, if the oil industry is in danger, then everything's put out of the closet and working against whoever wants to make a more livable environment. And you can see, because if we're looking at nowadays the war in Iran and Jerusalem, Israel, and Israel and Iran, there is a chance that it will block the Strait of Hormuz. So oil transportation is in danger. So now the US jumps in and tries to save because it's money, 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 money. Oil is, and all these states, yeah, everybody in the Middle East lives off money. Iran, Iraq, everybody. And if the money, if the oil production is in danger and there's not enough oil sold, then there is a problem. And I'm still thinking about the price per buck, the price per. I want to. If I'm going to look it up, I want to. I do know, but the price is, yeah. And if that is in danger, that's why you don't see any good initiatives for electric cars. That's why Elon Musk is still alive. It's remarkable, because I would expect that he would be shut down now. You don't hardly see any other electric companies from China, from Japan, from Korea into the United States, because it's endangering the gas prices. It's endangering selling oil products. To make tires, you need oil. It's all oil and the money, and that's my opinion. That's preventing all those good initiatives to find better solutions for a higher quality of life in the United States. So that's why I say leave. Leave. No. But yeah, that's my 2 bits about why in the United States there's still car dependency. It's motivated by the oil industry. That's all I can say. And that's all I will say. I hope you liked the video. If you do, then press like. If you want to see other videos of me, then look at this one. And otherwise, you can press on this button. It would be greatly appreciated to be a subscriber to my channel. It will help me and the algorithm to spread more about my videos. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.